First of all, I have a couple of disclosures. I might outrank Kevin, but everything I know about being a Dallas police officer, I learned from him because he was my first academy instructor when I was there. So Kevin, and also I'm clearly taking him with me to do all my PR from here on out. So thanks for the awesome introduction. Shannon, who's going to be here helping me with the practical skills today, Shannon's what we call a trauma nurse clinician at Parkland. They're actually the glue that holds our trauma program together. They're part nurse, part resuscitation specialist, part social worker. I mean, she's been, and most probably importantly, she's been putting up with my BS for almost 15 years, including in the haste with everything that's gone on over the last 3 weeks for us in town. Earlier this week, I was like, oh, man, I've got this thing on Thursday, and I needed to recruit some help. And so, of course, I call my No Limit soldiers, and I'm like, hey, we have plans on Thursday afternoon. And without question, they were like, okay, no problem. So I can't thank her enough for what she does. So we're going to plow through this. My goal is to get through this entire thing in probably under 90 minutes. Okay? And I think the important thing to tell you is that, obviously I'm bringing a lot of training to the table. I am a board certified surgeon. I'm double boarded or triple boarded now in general and trauma surgery, in surgical critical care, so I'm an intensivist, and I'm also board certified in emergency medical services. None of that matters today, okay? None of that matters, because the skills you're going to learn are going to help you do exactly what it says up on the screen behind me, which is essentially the first aid skills, the things you can do to save a life if you see something untoward happen in front of you. And honestly, who's going to see this first? Like, who's going to be, it's not going to be me, it's not going to be the Blue Jackets, it's going to be the people who are present and around when this thing happens. We used to call those people bystanders, right? And it totally doesn't convey the message that even though you're there and even though you're there when it happens, most people don't just stand around, they do something. So bystander was kind of a term that we were like, yeah, that doesn't really hold water. So you guys are the immediate responders, and you will be thrust. If recent events are any indicator, you're at high risk of being thrust into that role, okay? So that's what we're going to talk about. Okay. So here's what we're going to do. What I want you to do is I want you to leave here feeling confident that you can stop life-threatening bleeding if it occurs in front of you. Very simple. Okay, we'll talk about how to do that, ways to recognize it. But what's important is that you are the bridge between what happens in front of you and allowing me to have a fighting chance to save the person you're working on. You're the bridge. Because if you bleed to death en route to the hospital, there's nothing I can do for you. Okay? If you come to the hospital alive, you have about a 98% chance of leaving alive. If you come to the hospital dead, you have about a 98% chance of leaving dead. Okay? Pretty simple stuff. So I will tell you, some of these pictures are graphic. It's not as bad as it has been previously. This is actually, so just so you know, I'm not a great rule follower, okay? Just to put that out there right now. So this is, yeah, Shannon will tell you. This is actually a rogue presentation that's not even approved for use yet. They sent it to me today, and I was like, man, that looks better than the one we were going to use. So don't quote me, don't don't videotape me on this. Oh, never mind. Whoops, sorry. Okay. So here's the thing. Here's what I want to tell you guys. General rules for responding to some catastrophe that occurs in front of you. The idea is that I don't expect you to run into the middle of a gunfight to do any of the things we're talking about. Okay, obviously, you don't bring a tourniquet and a bandage to a gunfight, so if that's going on, I expect you to try to keep yourself safe. Okay, but what happens in these instances, they're so dynamic. There could be gunplay out here, and then the assailant's gone somewhere else, and you have wounded people, and you're safe to go see them, safe to go help them. So first and foremost, I want you to think about your own safety. A little different for me, okay, who has a responsibility to go to the problem. So in the downtown shooting, I was just talking about this with someone, very unnatural, surreal feeling to be running in the opposite direction of everybody else that's trying to get away. Okay, I don't expect you to do that, but if you're caught in something, I want to give you the skills to help out. And then the other thing is just, it's really simple, ABCs. Alert, bleeding, compress. That's all you have to remember. That's all you have to remember. It literally is that simple. Okay, and when we say alert, we want you to call 911 or call for help or alert someone here at Hunt that can help you, that can get some traffic on the way. You want to check and find life-threatening bleeding, understand what it looks like, what is life-threatening, what isn't, and lastly, compress. And there's a lot of ways to do that. We're going to show you all those ways. They may be as simple as using your hand, your fingers. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of equipment pre-positioned here in the building that can help you do this. Okay? And we're going to talk about all of it. So again, before you do anything, you got to keep yourself as safe as possible. Okay? Obviously, when we're talking about violence, nobody's ever perfectly safe, right? Nobody's ever perfectly safe. But if you become injured, you're not going to be able to do anything for anyone. And so the idea is to initiate care if you're safe enough to do so. Okay? The other thing is, you don't know what people have. I mean, this is not the average population that I deal with in the room. So I'm sure you all are engaged in low-risk lifestyles, but you don't know what people have. So better to protect yourself with a pair of gloves if you have access to it. Most important step in all of this, okay, is to alert somebody that something's going on. Make sure you dial, do you all have a different number? What do you dial here? 8880. Okay, so you guys are going to call 8880, let them know what's going on. If you're outside in your real life, not your work life, you're going to call 911. Make sure you let someone know, because that's going to trigger all the rest of us to be coming to help you with this, okay? Then the next thing we're going to talk, so that's pretty simple, alert, that's the A. The next thing is the B, is the bleeding, okay? And so you want to find out where the victim is bleeding from. Sometimes it's very obvious. You may see blood squirting out of their arm. You may see blood pouring out of their chest. Those things, very obvious. Other times you have to look a little bit, okay? So the things that would signify a bleed that is life-threatening are the things that are listed on the screen. Blood squirting out of the wound. Blood that won't stop. Blood that's pooling on the ground. Clothing or bandages that are soaked with blood. Loss of a whole arm, okay? Somebody that's in an explosion, their arm gets blown off and you just see a stump, okay? All of those things would lead you to believe that the bleeding is life-threatening. It's not you get a cut on your hand and a little bit of blood's dripping off your finger, or you cut yourself shaving and you can't get it to stop. You can bleed for months from your face, okay? And it's not going to be life-threatening. We're talking about really life-threatening squirting bleeding. It looks like that, okay? It looks like that. Oh man, you're in trouble. If you're already covering your mouth, whoo, we're just getting started, okay? We're just getting started. But it looks like that. That's what an arterial bleed looks like. And that's actually a pig. Okay, that's one of the oldest videos in teaching these types of classes. But when it squirts like that, that's what we're talking about. So if you see that coming out of the arm of someone who works with you, okay, that's something that you would need to intervene on. You okay? You sure? I see your face. You're like, oh, God. Okay. All right. So when we talk about wounds that can lead to death from bleeding, there's really occur in three types of places. The first is the arms and the legs, okay? It's actually the most frequent cause of preventable death overseas in the war. So these things are really easily controlled by pressure, and if the pressure doesn't work, we'll pop a tourniquet on these, and we're going to show you how to do that today. Very simple skills. That's the first place, arms and legs. The second is what we call junctional wounds, okay? So if you think about, you have extremities and you have your trunk. Okay? And everything that's not really in either one, that's kind of in the middle, that's the junction where those things come together. Those are junctional wounds. They're harder to control because there's not a place you can slip a tourniquet on that's up here in my shoulder or my groin. Okay? So what you have to do then is make sure that you use direct pressure and packing those wounds tightly with gauze. We'll practice all of that today. And the last thing is the chest and the abdomen. When the bullet gets inside your chest, or a stab wound or whatever explosion gets inside you, inside your chest or your belly, that is really a lot more difficult to control. There's nothing you can do from the outside. Okay, so those people need to be packed up by the most expeditious way possible and transported to the hospital as fast as you can. Okay, on July 7th, multiple officers were transported by police vehicle because that was the fastest, most available thing. There was no time to wait for the ambulance. So the key is identifying these people, getting them in the hands of somebody who knows what to do, how they can transport them, and getting them out of your place as quickly as possible. So that's B. The C is how we handle bleeding, and that's compression. So the first thing, you see life-threatening bleeding. Well, first of all, what do you do if the bleeding is not life-threatening? What's your name?
Jordan.
Is that an A&M ring?
It is.
Never mind. What's your name? Huh?
I'm from A&M too.
Oh, hell. Okay. Any non-Aggies in the room? Anybody that did not go to A&M that can answer a question right for me? Okay. Ma'am, what's your name?
Lily.
Okay, Lily. Let's just say I get a cut on my arm in this mess. Something happens here. What are you going to do?
Just bad.
Yeah, do what your mama would do. Put a Band-Aid on it, tell them to hold it, tell them not to worry about it. Let's go. Let's get out of here. Run, hide, fight, right? You know that. But if the blood's squirting out, okay, if the blood's squirting out, that's a different story. So from this point forward, we're talking about life-threatening bleeding, okay? We're not talking about the, you get a cut on your arm. So the first thing you're going to ask yourself is, what do I have to deal with this right now? I identify the life-threatening bleeding. Do I have equipment to deal with it? That's the first thing you see on the screen. And if the answer is no, you're going to start to improvise. Anything you've got, clean towel, shirt, rip your shirt sleeve off. It doesn't matter. Okay, what you're going to try to do is get as much pressure on this wound as possible. Okay? If you're stationary, you can use both hands and sit there and hold pressure. If you're going to move and get out of there, if you then go into run, hide, fight mode, then you may have to put a bandage on or something like that. But you have a lot of options just with the things you carry. Okay? Hands, clothes, belts, those sorts of things. Pressure stops most bleeding. Okay? Pressure stops most bleeding. And all the tools we're going to show you, those are just different ways to do it. Okay? But again, firm, continuous pressure, 10 minutes if you can, and trying to get, you don't want to take the pressure off to take a look. So here you can see a wound to the leg. If it's large and deep enough, you can try to stuff whatever you're going to use down into the wound. And you can see in this picture someone taking the shirt off their back and actually preparing to hold it over or stuffing it in the wound. The key is to apply continuous pressure with both hands on whatever's bleeding until you can stop it. Okay? Until you can stop it. Now, sometimes you're going to have the right stuff available to help you. Okay? So you're going to have these kits positioned all around the building. So if the wound's in an arm or a leg and the tourniquet's readily available, then you can use that. Okay? Especially if you're looking at life-threatening bleeding. If you don't have the tourniquet, and we'll teach you, we're going to show you how to use these in just a minute. If you don't have a tourniquet available, or all you have is a bandage available, you can start with the pressure bandage that you have, and then you can go to this, which is the tourniquet. Okay? So we'll show you how to use both of these in just a second. A tourniquet is a device that basically stops arterial flow down your extremity. Okay? If you put it on tightly and correctly, you will have no flow to your hand or your foot. We'll practice that today. You're going to feel what it feels like. Okay? These are safe to use. They don't cause limb loss. They've been used all over the place in the war, and we've saved tons of people by their use. Okay? And you guys have the best ones on the market out here available to you, and you'll see you've got the best tourniquets money can buy. Okay? So again, life-threatening bleeding from an arm or leg, you put the tourniquet on. It can be placed right on top of the clothing if you have to. You want to put it on 2 or 3 inches above wherever the bleeding wound is, but you don't want to put it over the elbow or the knee. Okay? Because it doesn't work very well compressing bones. You want to compress the muscle and tissue down onto the arteries that are bleeding. This will be very self-explanatory when we do it, when we work on this. The other thing is, if you feel your pockets right now and you've got phones and keys and all that mess, you don't want to put it on over a bunch of bulky items in your pocket, because that will take the pressure onto those items and off of the artery or vein, whatever's bleeding. Okay? So there are 3 tourniquets that are available. We actually only recommend 2. 3 are available and recommended by the military. The 2 that we use are the combat application tourniquet and the special operations tourniquet, the CAT and the soft T. And you'll get a chance to train with those today. The idea is that the problem with the EMT is it's got a bladder, an air bladder in it, so you actually pump it up like a blood pressure cuff. That doesn't do really well around sharp things in the field, so we tend to stay away from the emergency and military tourniquet. We use just the soft T and the CAT. This device, let's see, I've got one up here somewhere. Very easy to use, okay? It comes with some standardized pieces. It's got, this is actually a soft T, but oh, we got a CAT right here, good. Okay, so this is what it looks like. CAT tourniquet. It's got a strap. Basically, you'll see it's got a windlass rod. That's the plastic piece that you'll see. And it's got some Velcro, a self-adhering strap, and a timestamp. It is super easy to use and super easy to understand. All right, so can I borrow you for just a minute? Another A&M ring, but I'm going to let you make it. Come on up. Okay? Man, you guys are telegraphing too much information right now. Okay, what's your name?
Natalie.
Natalie, turn around and face Alex. Nice to meet you. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to run through all these steps looking at Natalie. So step 1, we already talked about identifying the bleed. Okay, the tourniquets come pre-staged, so the strap is already through the strap. Okay, strap is already through the clip. Yeah. We can start, and just you can start. Shannon's going to start passing them out. Strap's already through the clip. Okay, the way you do this, Natalie has a wound that's bleeding at her elbow. I slip this over her arm. Okay, I take take the strap and tighten it up as hard as I can tighten it, and then secure the Velcro, right? And then I twist this until the bleeding stops, okay? And I twist it. It's going to hurt a little bit, Natalie, sorry. And I twist it, okay? And it's going to get tight. Don't worry.
Oh my God.
It's going to get tight, okay? Now, that tourniquet is on, and what we're going to teach you to do and show you to do is if you feel this pulse, Natalie's hand doesn't have a pulse in it right now, okay? That's okay, though. That artery,
I'm about to pass out.
no, you're not. Are you really? Because we'll sit you down. That artery doesn't have any blood flow in it. It actually should be raising your blood pressure a little bit, not lowering it, okay? All right, so that is important because that's how you get it on there. Then we'll loosen it for you. Don't pass out, okay? So once you do that, then you just take this strap and drop it across. That is a place to write the time that you put it on. That's a luxury item. We'll ballpark it because we know what time the incident happened, okay? So that's really simple. That's the way the tourniquet goes on, and it's just that simple. And then, thank you very much. Give Natalie a round of applause. So that's, huh? Man, I've been waiting to see somebody with an Aggie ring in the front row, okay? So again, let's just run through the steps. Insert the wounded extremity through the tourniquet, pull the self-adhering band tightly, adhere the band around the extremity to the Velcro part. Hold on, don't put it on each other yet. We'll do it in a minute because we're going to help y'all, okay? Bunch of cheaters in here. Tighten the windlass until the bleeding stops. Lock the windlass in place, put the strap around, and then put the clip over the top, okay? Very easy. All right, so couple of things. Using the recommended tourniquet is totally safe. As long as you don't put it on and then say, hey, we'll see you in 2 weeks, okay? Follow up in the clinic in 2 weeks. Make sure you put it on and get the person to medical attention totally safe. That's number one. Know what you used to hear because people during World War II would get a tourniquet put on, or World War I, they'd get a tourniquet put on, and then they'd get sat up against a tree, and they would get to evacuate them in 24 or 36 hours later. Okay, that's how we rolled back then. We didn't have a better system of care. And so a bunch of people got their arms and legs cut off because the tourniquets were on. No, it's because of their injuries. They would have died. They would have bled to death, but they didn't get to medical attention in time. So if you leave it on for under 2 hours, nobody gets their leg or arm cut off. Okay? Again, I would much rather be walking around with 3 extremities, than to bleed to death. Okay? So again, if your choice is always life over limb, and we make that choice in the trauma center every day. Again, we use these tourniquets that are trainers because we want you to save yours for the real thing. Okay? So we don't use real ones to train. Even though I've done that, it's no big deal. I use them I went all over Brazil before the World Cup and the Olympics. I used training, real tourniquets, anything they had. Okay? So, couple of things. Number one, this hurts. You're going to see this today. Bad news. Kevin should have told you that before you got here. This does not feel good. Okay? But and people are going to be already hurting when you put this on them. They're going to have wounds. So they're going to scream and be mad. Be used to that. Okay? Pain does not mean you're doing it wrong. Pain also does not mean you should take it off. Okay, that is really, really important. So there are really some common mistakes that you can avoid. The most common mistake is not to use this device or use anything that you have when you really need it. So failure to recognize the life-threatening bleeding. The second most common mistake is to not make this tight enough. You're going to crank that thing down until you see the bleeding stop. And if one tourniquet doesn't do it, especially if it's on a big muscular leg, sometimes a second tourniquet needs to be applied. Okay, so you can put one above the other one. But again, so that's the second most common mistake. The third thing is a lot of times people say, okay, I put this on, we're not quite at the hospital yet, and you know what, maybe the bleeding stopped, like we're going to let it down and take a look. Don't do that. Once it's on until you get to the hospital and one of us takes it off. Okay, like we're not asking for you to make this your career. If you're doing this, right, if anyone in here is putting one of these on, is by definition going to be the worst day of your life. Okay? It's going to be the worst day of your life, but the person who you're putting it on is having the really worst day of his or her life. Okay? What I like to do is put it in a place where it's easy to get to. So I put it outside. See, it's not that big a deal. We're going to see this, but make it easy on yourself. Like if you put the windlass in here and you're like, move your arm, it's just painful. So put it someplace you can get to it. And again, it doesn't matter. It works this way. It works this way. There's no like right side up or anything like that. I mean, inside out makes it kind of hard, but that's really hard to do. So improvised tourniquets don't work very well. Okay, we learned that in Boston. So in the Boston Marathon bombing, like 45 people got improvised tourniquets, none of them worked. Okay, they slowed the bleeding down a little bit, but they didn't work. So a belt, you'll see this doesn't feel like your belt. You know, it doesn't feel like your belt. So that's really hard to fashion a tourniquet that will stay in place. Better to have the real thing. Okay? And second thing is if you're getting close to 2 hours, something really crazy is going on, right? You live 5 minutes from one trauma center, you work 5 minutes from one trauma center and 8 or 9 minutes from another. So if you're still in this building at 2 hours and still bleeding, something really bad has transpired. Okay? You should not be there. But even still, what kind of bleeding do we put these on for? Life-threatening bleeding. So if you're on here and this thing's still on in 2 hours and you haven't been rescued, then you still have something that's causing life-threatening hemorrhage underneath of you there, and you're still alive, right? So bleeding from life-threatening bleeding kills you in a matter of minutes. You bleed out, bleed to death. So if you're still alive at 2 hours, sweet, okay? Good work. Keep up the good work. Another component in your kit is the Olays modular bandage. This is designed to treat wounds that are bleeding, not squirting, things like that, but things that a normal wound that you would need to treat. It's a specialized bandage that has an ACE wrap, some elastic to it. It also has a plastic piece that's designed to help you put pressure on the wound. So very simply, if Sergeant Murray here has a wound in his arm, you take the white part, comes out of this package, bandage comes out of the yellow package. The white part of the bandage goes onto the wound. Take the bandage, apply it, and then all you do is take this ACE wrap and just roll it up as tight as you can roll it from the bottom up, okay? So from the hand to the heart, or the foot to the heart. And you take it, wrap the ACE bandage, and once you get done, okay, there's a clip that'll help you secure it into place, clip and Velcro. Once you get that done, as you squeeze this, it should feel firm to the touch. You should not see any bleeding through this dressing at all, through or around. And if you do see additional bleeding, if the person continues to bleed, you need to go to one of the additional items in your kit, either the tourniquet or the combat gauze. Now we're going to use a hemostatic gauze or anything, some kind of cloth. You guys are going to be lucky here when you're at work because you have the best equipment money can buy. Literally, Mr. Hunt spared no expense. Okay, so you're getting the same gauze that every military soldier is deploying to Iraq and Afghanistan with is going to be in the building. It's called Quick Clot Combat Gauze. It comes in one of 3 types of packages. I think yours is in a little white package. We'll show it to you here in a minute. Okay. Sometimes it looks like this. It's in kind of a black and white package. This is the version that goes to public safety people. And then it also comes in a green package. So it's packaged multiple different ways. Okay. Here's what you do. If this is if you don't have a tourniquet available, it's in the arm or leg, or the wound is in the neck or the shoulder or the groin, those things that we call junctional hemorrhage, okay? You're going to have to look at that hole, and this is the part where people are like, oh my God, I'm not sure I can do this, okay? Look at the hole and pack some stuff into it. Here's what it looks like. This is Quick Clot Combat Gauze on the right. That's what you're going to have, okay? Yours likely will not have the blue stripe because the blue stripe is made for me when I use it in the operating room. The blue stripe is the radio opaque stripe that I can pack it in somebody's belly and then look at it and see if I can get it out, okay? So this is what it looks like. You're going to basically open the clothes around the wound where you think it's bleeding. Okay? Try to get any excess blood out of the way. Then you're going to take that gauze, whatever you have, whether you're using gauze, regular gauze, shirt sleeve, I don't care. Ideally, you want to use the hemostatic gauze, the Quick Clot. Everything else is a lesser alternative. And you're going to stuff that into that hole as tightly and as hard as you possibly firmly can, okay? And it looks like that. This is what I want you to do. It's your natural instinct to see that bleeding wound and to do what's on the bottom of the screen. Just put it on top, okay? That's the mom move, right? Oh goodness, you're bleeding, boom, I'm going to put this on top. But the wound is actually bleeding at the bottom, okay? So I want you to think of it like a cup or a bowl. Here we're going to use these wound packing trainers to show you what to do. When I was in South America, we didn't have that, okay? So we basically use cups because it works. So the bleeding occurs at the bottom and the sides of the cup or the bowl. So as you're packing this wound, you want to pack it full and tight enough that the pressure is pushing from the middle outward on the back and the sides, or the bottom and the sides of the bowl. That's what the top looks like, okay? So you're literally going to fill it as much as you can with the combat gauze. And then you're going to take your bandage, or whatever you have, and wrap it around it to hold it in place, okay? Pretty straightforward, again, not rocket science. See hole, fill hole, okay? Pretty straightforward, all right? And then if the wound stopped, leave it alone. Don't mess with it. Get the person to someone that can help them. If it hasn't stopped, then you may need to do something. Skip that. I think the videos aren't working. If it hasn't stopped, then you may need to do something different. You may then have to put a tourniquet on somewhere if you can do that, okay? If you can't, then what's the only other thing you can do? Get them out of there as fast as possible. Hopefully by the time you've done all that, some help has arrived, and I'm going to say, great job, thank you, drag the person from you, and we're going to put them in an ambulance or put them in a police car and take them to the hospital, okay? That's the thing. So again, not rocket scientists. These are easy skills to acquire. The key is, again, does anything look like something you cannot do here? Okay? The key is making the decision to do it and then doing it. Okay? And getting over the fear, oh my God, what if I'm wrong or whatever? Look, if somebody's got a hole in them and they're bleeding in front of you, you basically can't be wrong. Okay? You cannot be wrong. Okay? You cannot be wrong. Especially if they need your help, you're giving it to them, you cannot be wrong. I mean, unless you take a tourniquet. Now, for all the Aggies, pay attention. Okay? Where'd that tourniquet go? I gave it to somebody. So unless you take this and you wrap it around somebody's neck, okay, that like I said, Aggies, pay attention, okay, then that I would say is wrong. Okay, that obviously wouldn't work. But short of that, this is a very hard device to mess up. Okay, you may not put it on tight enough, and somebody may come and crank it down more for you and whatever, but again, do the best you can. You are immediate responders. You're here to help. Okay, you're here to help. So, obviously, run, hide, fight, way to save yourself. But if you can't run, hide, fight, and you're trapped, use these things we're going to show you. One of the most important skills that you'll pick up today is the skill to pack a wound that is not amenable to placing a tourniquet. The way you do that is by taking this QuikClot combat gauze that comes in the white package in your kit, open it up, take the combat gauze out. It's folded very easily for you. And all you have to do is take as much gauze as you can and pack it as tightly as you can into the hole. Remember that you've got to pack from the bottom up. So you want to fill the wound like it's a bowl, fill it up from the bottom, and make sure that there's no space left in the bottom and the sides. You'll be surprised at how much gauze you can pack into even a small hole. The idea is to completely fill this and put the wound under pressure from the inside with the combat gauze. The combination of the pressure and the combat gauze itself will help stop bleeding in a wound like this. I hope in my heart that you don't ever have to do any of this. I really do. But if you do, I think, look, you've spent 75 minutes on this and you're prepared. Okay? So it's important for y'all to spread the word to your community groups, to other places you're a part of, kids' schools, all that if they are interested in training like this, to reach out to me. And we'll get a team out there to do it. Okay? We'll get a team out there to do it because it's that important.